feel like every time I move this pulpit, I have to reference that it is really heavy. I'm not just making it look heavy, just so you know. Shout out to Johnny Malott, who purchased this. The joke is that it's a battering ram. It goes way back to where we've had 3 of these, and they were each less sturdy than the last. And one week, one was barely hanging on by a thread. And if you know Pastor Brady, he is very frugal. And that is an awesome thing. Anything you give that you give the church to donate, just know that pastor is stretching it as far as it can possibly be stretched. And he is getting out of it, and he takes the job of stewarding your money very seriously. And in a day and age where you look around, you wonder that sometimes. You just know that does not have to be a wonder here. And this pulpit was just hanging on by a loose, and Johnny, I could see, was just building in his head and said, nope. And with one giant like karate chop, boom, it went in pieces. And I saw Bastar's eyes get big, and Johnny said, I'll get you one by next week. Hang on. And so Johnny bought one that will not be falling apart. No matter how many times we load it in and out of a trailer, it's just very, very heavy. But that's a good thing. So with Pastor Brady not here, I feel like, not only is he not here, Pastor Torrance is not here, and Pastor Keith is not here. So I kind of feel like I can say whatever I want because no one's going to know, right? Most of you, if you don't know me, again, my name is Michael Sumner. I am the next-gen pastor here at Fresh Hope, which I think that just puts me over everything through entire youth from 18-year-olds down to our newborns. And my wife is a kids pastor, so I am her boss. That's right. For you that don't know, you're like, okay, keep thinking that, Michael. Yeah, keep saying that. But no, it's just, I kind of been in that. So we each moved into our roles about 3 months ago now. So this marks the first time in 12 weeks I've been in service with you all, because we've been back there with the kids. We're creating our own new curriculum, retraining, redoing all of our volunteer systems, reorganizing the class structures, just a lot of work that Kendra specifically has put into that. We've just been back in there. So it's unique to kind of get back in here. I've been following the sermons online, knowing that I had to speak in a progression, and I didn't want to like say the thing they just said last week or the week before. And so, which I think we're going to be good, but to kind of get me a little bit, so if you don't know, like my position here is a volunteer position at the church. I love it. That's okay with me. It's not a complaint. The joke Pastor Keith makes all the time is that I pay to work here. And that's awesome. And I think I do. I think I give every week. I just sent a ding a few minutes ago sitting in church. So, but I did professional commercial HVAC for like 10 years. And I'm still in that general field in a different kind of a role, but that's what I do week in, week out. My job often requires travel. So I travel quite a bit. And I was just talking to Jason back there, the man running the sound system. He also travels quite a bit for work, maybe more than me. I think he made it back from a 9-hour flight from Paris just to be with us this morning. That was before his multi-hour jump to Morocco, where he was doing his job this week. So he travels, but I travel a lot, right? And the airport can give some frustrations, right? Even though I have it down, but like it makes me, like I'm very a task-oriented person. Like my goal is to get to that plane at the exact time boarding group 1 is ending. That's my goal, because I'm big time. I am boarding group 1, just so you know, sorry, bring the story topic, but that is me. But I don't want to get to the beginning. That's like too early, like right there. So like a perfect time airport to me is if I can walk out of my Uber, walk through security, walk at a nice brisk pace, and I can go as they're getting ready to boarding group 2, I can just step right into the front and I'm in, that's it. And so with this, you learn to, you just like, profile everybody and everything, and like who's going to take longer, kids, yeah, not that line, yeah. And if you don't know, I have 5 of my own, so I know how this works, right? And it's like, those, people with boots tied, steel-toe boots tied at an airport. What is going on? Stay away from that guy. I'm not in that security line. You kind of move over, kind of go through it. But I have this thought I've been pitching to my wife, like how maybe we could segregate the airport just a little bit to make things simpler. Hear me out. We split it like in half by credit score. And it doesn't have to be like crazy high, but like let's say somewhere around like 720, right? Where if you're above 720, you go to one side, and if you're below, like you go to security and boarding like on the other side, right? Because there was a lot of time in my life where I was well below 720. I can give you some teenage and early married credit scores of Mike and Kendra, or you'd be like, they go that low? They do. And I wasn't in any position to like be on the other side. But I'm just thinking, just hear me out. Don't have to go away, but maybe that is. Maybe you start paying some bills on time, getting a few credit limits, or paying some things down, getting a few options out there, getting your age of credit history gets older. Maybe just kind of push you over into one side. Anyway, that's all I thought. That's neither here nor there. It's nothing to do with anything to do with Colossians. Let's go with today. But I will also tell you, when you travel a lot by yourself and then you go on a family vacation, By the way, there's a difference between vacation and a family trip. Come on, can you hear me out here, right? Vacation's when you and your wife go to like Tahiti. A family trip is when you and your family go anywhere, right? And so like if you're not familiar, there's a TSA pre-check, which if you don't have TSA pre-check, what is wrong with you people? Get TSA pre-check. It's like $60. You skip a line. It lasts for 5 years. Like, have your kids sell candy, raise money. You got to have that. If you fly once, it's worth it. Then there's like the bougier step where you can get clear. So if you're not familiar, that's where like the little machine scans your eyes. I've given in. It's already part of it, right? So if you don't want the government to have your info, like, I'm sorry, I get it. You get along great with my dad, but I'm already sold out. I guess I'm in. So we have this thing where we scan your eyes. With that, your kids come with you if you go free. And in that moment, our kids do this fun thing where they act like they have never seen us before and that they do not know us. All of them. You might think, oh, your little ones? Nope. My 17-year-old right up front here. So if you don't know my boys, they all have longer names that are shortened down. So for example, Lex, his name is Alexander. So we're going through clear. This is just last year when we went to a trip out of the country, right? And they go, oh, son, what's your name? The first they say, where's Alexander? And here's my kids. Including just looking around like, no Alexander here. And it's like, dude, you know what your name is. It's been come on, man. Oh yeah, that's right, yeah. So he gets through and they go to Xenia next. So my young daughter, and they say, who is this to you? And they put his hand on his shoulder and she says, Michael? It's like, Z, do you ever call me Michael? Ever? In your whole life? Ever? No, what do you call me? Pastor Michael? And it's like, and the people behind the counter are like, you're kind of laughing. You think they think it's funny too? They do not think it's funny. TSA does not have a sense of humor. So anyway, that's it. We'll get into Colossians now. I just want you to know, like, that's my life of traveling in and out of airports. It somehow gets worse if you're with your family just because you know how to move better. But anyway, that's all. That's it for today. In our book of Colossians, so I've been speaking Kid Church, I mentioned, for the last 12 weeks. And so what's important to me is I always make sure there's context. And I think that's good for all of us to understand what's the context in which we're reading or we're hearing about in this day. The book of the Bible is awesome. I love the book of the Bible. It's 66 different books that's written over a 1,500-year period of time. It's written in 3 different languages by about 40 different authors across the course of like 3 different continents. And so if you don't understand who, what, when, where, why, a lot of these can be confusing. You can hear a lesson and think, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Why were they fighting? Who were they fighting with? Why would he say that? Why didn't he just... So I'm going to go up and give you a little bit of backstory if we can kind of back up. Because I think to first understand Colossians 4, you have to understand what is this book of Colossians, which is just a collection. It's a letter that somebody wrote to another people. It's written by a man named Paul. And I think to understand Paul, you understand of where he's at when he's writing this. This is one of those letters that Paul wrote, one of 4, where he's in prison. And he's not in prison for stealing or for murder or for anything wild. He's in prison for his faith in Jesus. They basically said, hey, stop telling people that Jesus raised from the dead or you're going away. And he said, I'm going to keep telling them. So they locked him up. So that's where this letter is written. I think to understand Paul and who he was to kind of get to this person that he's willing to be locked up for his faith. And then he's now writing letters to other churches, understand that who he was. And so we're going to back up even farther. So this was, I'm going to say, somewhere around the neighborhood of 40 to 60 years after Jesus had passed away. This man named Paul comes onto the scene. But his name is not Paul. His name is Saul. And a quick reference, I have found out many adults over the years think that Saul, who became Paul, is the same Saul who was the king before David, and that is not the case. They took place 1,500 years apart from one another. This named Saul. Well, see, after Jesus died, 3 days later, he rose from the dead, and his disciples started scattering all throughout the known world, all throughout Europe, Africa, Asia, spreading the gospel. And at first, people were okay with it. And then they started really spreading the fact that Jesus had raised from the dead. And this was like a big no-no. This is when it really started putting people on notice. For example, Jesus had 11 disciples. When Judas moved off the scene, he added one. He had 12. All 12 of those disciples went out spreading the gospel, sharing their faith. And all but one of them was eventually martyred, which is murdered, for their faith in horrific manners. Some of them were boiled in water. Others of them were literally executed on a cross like Jesus was. In fact, Peter was executed on a cross and said he didn't deserve to die the way Jesus did. So they went ahead and turned that cross upside down. He hung on a cross upside down and died. They had different disciples that the Bible and modern history will also tell us that were skinned alive, that were beheaded, that just died in all these horrific ways. Well, this was the day and age where this man Saul is into play. He's very upset at this person named Jesus. And then he was so intent on proving he's not God, he spends his entire life fighting it. I have a young lady who works with me at work, and she is a hardcore atheist. And she's devoted a good part of her life to proving that there's not such thing as Jesus, which is kind of wild when you think about it. Now, I know we got some kids in the room, so you have to do some damage control when you get home later, but I'm not a Santa Claus person, right? So I don't personally believe in Santa, and I have never spent any amount of time trying to talk people out of their belief in Santa. Who cares, right? He's not a person. He didn't live, whatever. It's not his thing. You believe. I don't spend any time on it. Yet people in the same way think Jesus is that same fictional, mythical character. Something that we tell our kids stories about, our lords, be good, Jesus is watching. But then they'll spend their entire life fighting the idea that this fake person doesn't exist. It's like, well, did he exist or did he not? Right? But that's what this work does, and she's just so set on that. Well, Paul, still called Saul, works for the Roman government. And his job is to essentially round up, persecute, and imprison people, and sometimes murder people for their faith in Jesus. That is his job. And by the way, we get to know from the stories that he is very good at his job. This man, Saul, is very good at finding people out, finding out who they are, finding out what they believe, pulling them out. He takes them to jail. In some cases, he executes them. And he's very, very good at this. This is his profession, his career, and he has a passion about it. Until one day, everything changes in Saul's life. The Bible says he's on a horse and he's riding from Jerusalem out to Damascus, almost certainly looking for more people that are Christians that he can round up and bring back into jail. But something happens on this road to Damascus. Often we'll call the story the road to Damascus, that Saul sees this bright light from heaven, this extremely bright light that's so powerful, it knocks him off his horse onto the ground. And the Bible says that Jesus speaks to him. There's a lot of places in the Bible where it says God speaks. We hear God's voice from heaven a lot. This is the one where we hear Jesus speaks from heaven. Jesus, who had just died and rose from the dead, about 30, 40 years older, but previous. And he speaks to Saul while he's laying on the ground, knocked off his horse, blinded, literally blinded, can't see a thing, by the light. And Jesus says, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Which is rough. I feel like I've had the Lord speak to me a few times. I could name 2 times, so I won't get into today, where I feel like the Lord has spoken to me, where I almost had to glance over and see, just make sure he wasn't standing there. It was so obvious. And both times I felt like they were a rebuke. I was not asking the Lord for something. I had said something one time, in fact, both these times were in prayer. And I felt like I had come boldly to the throne of grace like we're supposed to, but I felt like I had taken liberties where I felt like the Lord and it finally said, enough. I got it. I'm God. Be careful who you're talking to. I'll listen. I'll hear your complaint. But at some point, hang on, I'm God. Well, this is that moment that Paul has. He's knocked off his horse and he's blinded by this light and he can't see. And the Bible says he stays blind for 3 days. And he's helped on to Damascus. And eventually a man named Onesimus comes to him and he heals him of his blindness. And Paul says, my life will never be the same. I've seen the light quite literally and physically. And the rest of my life, I'll turn from my ways. I'll forgive my profession. And I'm going to try to gather those in the cause for Christ. Just a total life-changing moment. And it's just this wild story that, by the way, if it happened to you or me, it would change our lives forever too. And everything changes in Paul's life. Paul then becomes what we would call a missionary, right? He ends traveling throughout the world, starting all kinds of churches. He starts a church in Philippi, in Corinth. He starts a church in Thessalonica. He starts a church in Galatia. He starts all of these churches, and then his ministry comes to an abrupt halt when he is arrested and thrown into jail. Paul does most likely 2 separate stints in jail, right? He's arrested and imprisoned for his crimes of his faith, and then somehow he gets out in a miraculous way, and then he can't keep his mouth shut, which is kind of awesome. So he gets thrown back into jail, not as awesome, and here he is. And so some of these letters he's writing, because Paul ends up writing between 11 and 14 books of the Bible, depending on who you think authored what books, which is the most of any person, by the way. He writes many of these back to churches that he started. However, this is different. The church of Colossae is not a church he started. It's just a church that he knows about, that folks in his church or through his path, his friends, his common friends have told him, hey, this church is starting, it's doing well, maybe you can give them some advice. In fact, we find out Paul's never even been to this church. He says in Colossians 3 that he's never been to the city. He's not familiar with the city of Colossae. So he's writing this as a letter. So this title here today, I'm going to kind of take it to kind of jump into it, is I feel like there's times in my life where maybe I have felt like Paul. And maybe you will too if you kind of let me set that context a little bit. Saul was somebody who had an accomplished career, was passionate about it, knew what he was doing, knew where he was going, and he felt like the Lord in heaven spoke to him in such a way that he had to give it all up. I'll turn from that. I'll forget my profession. I'll give my life. I'll leave everything away, all my friends, everything I thought I do. I'm going to get rid of all of it, and I'm going to follow Jesus. No turning back. This is me. I'm dead focused on it. This is what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to tell others about Jesus, and I don't care who knows about it. He's knocked off the horse. He's blinded. He can see again for the first time. He's reborn. He's ready to go. He has all these things to do with his life. He's starting churches. He's building. He's growing. He's changing the world for Christ. And then all of a sudden, he finds himself in prison. Well, that's not right. I have felt like that. There's been times in my life where I felt like I had turned from what I was doing, and I was doing something where I felt like this is my cause. This is it. I've seen it. I've seen the light. God in heaven has spoken to me. He maybe didn't knock me off a horse or blind me, but he showed me what I need to do. I know what I need to do, and I'm on my route of doing that, and I know where I'm going, and I know where I'm going to be, but yet I find myself in a place of waiting. Maybe not in prison, which I have not been. Maybe not in jail, which I have not been, but nonetheless in a series of waiting. Here I am, sitting on a figurative, cold, concrete bench, getting 2 meals a day if I'm lucky, and just thinking, that this isn't what I was called to do, Lord. Like, God, this isn't what you blinded me for. This isn't what you called me for. Like Lord, I've given up some things for you. Like, I've pushed some friends away. Like, I've turned down financial careers. Like, I've done things where I've turned down promotions and I've gone things because I want to follow you, yet, Lord, I'm sitting here in my waiting. And I think in chapter 4 of Colossians, Paul very much lays out what he's doing. And I think it lays out very well to be the title of what my sermon will be today is what to do in our waiting. I'm going to give you 4 little points. We'll rush through these, but what to do in your waiting. I think sometimes we wait so long and sometimes we mistake that the presence of silence does not equal the absence of God. If you get nothing else I have today, take a picture, write that one down, got it. It's not my quote. You can write my name underneath it if you'd like. And the person who actually said it might have a word with you, but don't worry, no one's going to see. We'll be okay, right? The absence of God or the silence of God is not the absence of God. There are times in life where God wants you to be still and know that he's God. And sometimes he speaks in a still small voice. And sometimes it's just a matter of waiting, which is what makes faith so beautiful. Right? The folks that walked with Jesus all denied him and weren't with him when it was time for him to die, right? They lived with him in presence and it still didn't do any good for him. The waiting sometimes is that. In Colossians 4:2, it says, continue steadfastly in prayer, being watchful in it with thanksgiving. Continue steadfastly in prayer. I feel like in my life that I have learned that I'm developing a skill to pray. And I know it's something we can learn because the disciples went to Jesus and said, teach us to pray. I think as you learn and you develop and you walk with your walk with God and your relationship with the Lord, you learn better to pray. I think very much as it's like a relationship. So I've been married 20 years. My wife, Kendra, and I, almost 20. It's coming up sometime in July. Don't quote me. It's coming up here pretty soon, 20 years. Sorry, I see my wife back there. She's like shaking her head through the dark lights. She puts up with this all the time, folks. 20 years married, and we've developed a relationship. We've learned a skill of communicating. We've learned what to say, what not to say, when to say it, how and when to say at the same time, what not to say. We've learned what our likes and our dislikes. We've learned where our hot buttons are. We've learned what ticks each other off. We've learned what each other's love languages are. We've developed that. And it's the same way with our relationship with the Lord that we can develop that. Is Paul's here saying pray steadfastly. He's not telling us what to pray for, which is interesting. He's telling us how to pray. He's not saying like, oh, well, pray for this, pray for that, pray for this. In fact, when I started my spiritual journey as a high schooler, I began to create a prayer list. And it was just that. It was a list of names on a paper. And eventually I got it so big, I was so proud of myself. I put them in these little clear sheets in a binder. And I would get up in the morning, I would pray through my list, and it would go something like this. Bless mom, bless dad, bless Miss Knieser, my teacher. Bless Mr. Moffitt, the construction guy by our school. Bless Mr. Sisson, my principal. Bless my sister. I have another sister. Bless my brother. There we go. And I would read through this list. That was praying, and that was the beginning of my prayer life. But that was kind of like me sitting down with my wife. Hey, what do you like to do? What's your favorite color when we were dating 25 years ago? And as we progressed, we moved on from that. And I realized I had to move on from that. I had an aunt and uncle that were unsaved. And every day I would say, oh, Lord, help Uncle Buddy meet you. And I had to learn that it was beyond that of prayer, that I had to pray steadfastly, firm in my footing, begging the Lord, almost arguing with the Lord, raising my voice sometimes to the Lord, really fighting for the things that I wanted. That it was a steadfast thing. It was not just a pray without ceasing, although it was that. It was not just pray for your leaders, your pastors, your loved ones. It was beyond that. It was pray steadfastly, unmovable. Lord, I'm not moving. Save my uncle, and I'm going to keep asking you every day, this day, that day, tomorrow. I'm not saying no for an answer. And it was, Lord, arrest him in his job, knock him off his feet, blind him if you have to, knock him off his horse. God, get Buddy's attention, save him. Because my prayers had moved from beginning prayers to steadfast prayers. Paul in prison is telling this church of Colossae, pray steadfastly in thanksgiving. What does he have to be thankful for? He is in prison. Yet he says steadfastly in thanksgiving. If you're in that moment of waiting, feel like you've been called, that you know what you're supposed to be doing, but you've been asked to wait, pray steadfastly. Learn to pray. Go to some man in this church. Go to some lady in this church that you look up to. Teach me to pray. Just like disciples went to Jesus. Learn that. The developed skill of praying steadfastly will change your life. It changes your circumstances. We learn this, pray steadfastly. And when I said persistent prayer, number 2 was pray for his purpose. Colossians chapter 4, verse 3 says, at the same time, pray also for us that God may open to us doors for the work to declare the mystery of Christ, on the account which I am in prison. I think this is kind of funny here as Paul drops the word mystery. Like he's almost kind of like, I'm doing my thing. I'm loving the Lord, trying to serve. We're in prayer. We're in prison. Pray steadfastly. Love the Lord. Pray for his will. It's kind of a mystery why we're all here, though. Like, I am in jail, Lord. Are you hearing this? It's a mystery, right? We have these things come in our life, whether it's a breakdown of a car, whether it's a missing of a promotion, whether it's a demotion, whether it's you didn't get that job you want, you didn't get that house you want, the unexpected bill you want. And it's like, Lord, it's kind of a mystery why you have my car break down. We got to get to work. Lord, I'm trying. I gave up a lot. I'm doing this thing. It's a little bit of a mystery why you wouldn't give me that promotion I'm up for. That's what Paul's saying. But with this, he's praying for the Lord's will to be done. I think often, I know I've been there, where I'm praying steadfastly, but for my will to be done, because I know what's best. Lord, let me pastor that church. Lord, let me run this business. Lord, let me do this. Lord, give me that promotion I wanted. Lord, give me this job I wanted. Give me that car I wanted, that house I wanted. Give me that relationship that I wanted. Restore that relationship I'm asking for. And these can all be good things, but we're asking for things, even if it's steadfastly, that are not his will, but ours. Paul is saying, open doors, even with where I'm at. I know I'm in prison, Lord, and I'm begging you. I'm steadfast in prayer, and it's a mystery why I'm here, but open doors that while I'm here, in my waiting, your will be done. While you're at that job that stinks, ask the Lord to use you in that job. When you're on the waiting in the season of where you're knocking on doors, or you're sending out applications, trying to get that next position, or where you're waiting on those leads, or you're waiting and you're just stuck, and you know that there's something bigger beyond you and that you're on the right path, you know it. Pray steadfastly. Ask God that use you in that moment that you're in. No matter how mysterious that moment is, ask that God will use you in that moment. Read down a little bit farther. I have number 3, proclaim with salt seasoned speech. By the way, for an HVAC guy, I hope you can just appreciate this alliteration I'm giving to you. Persistent prayer and proclaim the salt seasoned speech. I'm just saying that didn't just flow off the tongue, so you can just take a second to appreciate that. Colossians 4:6. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each person. Salt in this day is likely one of, if not the most precious minerals out there. And there were times where salt itself would be worth more than even like silver or gold, because it was so valuable. So you think that, refrigeration is only about 100 years old, which is kind of wild to think about, right? Like 100 years ago, like no AC, no refrigerator. Yeah, and again, I work in a place where if somebody's AC goes out, they will lose their minds. It is out at noon. I want this thing running cool by 12:30, right? I'm giving you 30 minutes. Get this going. No pressure, but I gotta have it. And it's like, that wasn't even a thing 60 years ago in America, right? Pre-refrigeration day, salt was multiple things, but it was also used as a preservative. If you caught fish or you killed animals that was going to go bad, what you do is you would pack it with salt. You would help it preserve it. It would last longer. Maybe not the days which you're going to drag things out now, but it was preserving it. So what Paul is saying is let your speech be seasoned with salt, or let your speech be life-giving or life-preserving. How often is our speech not life-giving? I mentioned earlier, I'm very task-oriented. And if I'm not careful at work, there's sometimes I can, here's the next, here's this, get in, get out, next, do this thing. And I will not be careful, and my speech will not be giving life. It will not be seasoned with salt. Bible says that life and death are in the power of the tongue. Solomon says that, the wisest man ever to live. Did I say wisest man ever to live? I don't even think he was white. There we go. Wisest man ever to live. Death and life are in the power of your tongue. You know, there's an old saying we'd say sometimes on the playground, right? Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I think some of you in here is like, I'd rather take a stick than some of the hurtful words I've heard in my life. Maybe you don't hear what my dad used to say to me, or what my mom used to say to me. You haven't heard the words my spouse has said to me. You haven't heard the words that my children, both small or grown, have said to me. You don't know the words my coworkers, my bosses, or my employees used to me. It's like, I'd rather take a stick, take a baseball cap to or a baseball bat to my kneecap before I hear those words again, because that's the Bible truth. Death and life are in the power of your tongue. Our world was spoken into existence by the Lord. He spoke it and it was happened. He didn't build it, form it, make it. He spoke it and it happened. The words you use can absolutely give death to people. It can suck the life, the energy, the usefulness, the will out of them, or it can be breathed into them, that life you give them. Be someone that you go throughout your day, especially if you feel like, man, I'm stuck in this season where I'm not where I need to be exactly. I know where I want to be. I know what God's called me to do, and I feel like I've equipped myself for it, but I'm waiting for it. Make sure you're giving life to those around you, that you're packing those other things that still have some usefulness left to them, that you're preserving them, that you're pushing it on, you're giving more life and beyond that life. Let's not be that one that's taking death from it. And 4, we'll finish with this. We read down farther in Colossians. I wrote, prioritize proven friendships. I saw a meme the other day. If you're not familiar with memes, it's weirdly a large part of my life. I wish it wasn't, but memes and reels, I don't know. So if you're in this room and I've sent you a reel this week, no, we're tight. We're really good. And if we haven't, then I'm sorry, you haven't made the inner circle yet, but maybe someday it's something to look forward to. And believe me, you will regret the day that you came into my reel circle here. But the meme said, the greatest miracle Jesus ever did was a man in his mid-30s having 12 close friends. And it was like, yeah, I do not have 12 close friends. Like, I don't know if I have any close friends. Like, I'm losing that a couple loosely here, but I have a few here. Yet kind of stay with me here as we read through Colossians here. We read a bunch of verses where Paul's just name dropping. Here's all my friends, by the way. He says in Colossians 4:7a, Titus, he'll tell you about all my activities. He reads down a little bit farther in verse 9, he says, and with Onesimus, our faithful and beloved brother. A little bit farther down, next verse, Aristarchus, my fellow prisoner, greets you. He's got a dude in there in jail with him, right? That he says, oh, and Mark, my other cousin of Barnabas. Oh, and then there's Jesus. His name is Justus, as we call him. And he says, oh, and there's Arapasus in verse 12. He's the one with you, a servant of Christ to Jesus. And he says, oh, yeah. And then Luke, the beloved physician, he greets you as Demas. He's naming through just person after person after person who he's helping, who he's with, who he's working on, who's with him in the prison. Ask yourself today, if you had to be called out for your faith and you were taken to jail, is somebody by your side going with you? Is your friends that you make, are the friends you make that you associate with, are they the kinds to be like, if you're going, I'm going with you, brother? If not, you might want to assess that a little bit. One of the greatest things about America is our freedom of religion, that we can go out, we can do this, we can proclaim it over and over. The day may come in our future where that freedom has been taken away. I pray every day that it is not, but it may be. And if that day comes, who's going with you to jail? Are those friends around you, are they going with you? Or are they going to step back and be like, we're going to worship Jesus from back here? Who are those people that are going with you? Who are those friends you have in your life? Paul's got a bunch of them. He just named, hey, here's who I'm helping. Who are you helping in your life? If you're in here, you're above the age of 25, who are you mentoring that's younger than you? Because that answer should not be no one. Who are you mentoring? Who are you helping along with your life? If you're in that age and you're younger, let's say you're 30 or younger, you're 40 or younger, who's that person you're looking up to? Who's that person that's writing you a letter? Who's that person that you're responding? Hey, I know you've never been to my home, never been to my city, never been to my church. Can you give me some advice? Who's that person you are asking advice for? Who's that person that's going down with you? Who's that person that you're being advised to? Who's that person that's helping? Who are you helping? Who are you tying into the mix? Who are you bringing into church here with you? And you're stuck in these times. I've been in those times where it's dark. And if you heard me preach, I did last time here, maybe 3 months ago, and I mentioned some really dark times in my life where things weren't going how I wanted, and we just had a stillborn baby, and things were just rough, and I wasn't on the path I wanted, and I had a knock on the door of a man named Dan, a friend of mine. He was an Onesimus. He was a Justus. He was a Luke. He was one of these people that in my tough time that he was saying, I'm here for you, man. If you're going down, I'm going down with you. We're stuck in that life. If you are Paul, if you're not, you will be someday. And if you're not someday, maybe you've been there in the past. What are you doing? Pray steadfastly. Pray those meaningful, powerful prayers where you are steadfast in a moment. God, I'm not moving until you answer these prayers. Pray that his will be done. Like, take you out of it. Lord, you use me to do your will in my mystery of why I'm stuck. Lord, surround me with good friends. Lord, season my speech. Lord, let me speak life to people and not that of death. And I started with, let's end with the same quote where I just mentioned his presence or his silence, and in his presence is, the presence of silence is not the absence of the Lord. In that moment of your steadfast prayer, when you are calling out to the Lord and you hear no answer, no, that does not mean he's not there. It just means you're in that period of waiting. Let's follow these steps. Let's dive into Colossians and do this together. And let's be a Paul during our times where things are not going how we wanted in life, that we can still continue until we get out on that other side.